Great. Well, Randy, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. For the listeners, I would love for you to explain, for those people that don't know Virox Technologies, who are you and what do you guys do?
Well, Virox is a 23-year-old company positioned in the infection control space. So we're a chemical engineering firm with proprietary technologies for disinfecting hand surfaces, devices, all with peroxide. We've got a new technology based on citric acid that's patented, and that'll be coming out in 2022. So at the end of the day, what we do is we try to interrupt the spread of infection. So back, you go back 20 years ago, and people were still arguing whether you could get a pathogen from a surface. And now people understand that, you need to disinfect surfaces, you need to, especially high-touch areas, and you need to disinfect devices even more so. And you need to sanitize your hands. And if you don't have soap and water, hey, you know what? A hand sanitizer is fine. So we're in that space. And, the best question I think you can ever ask in business when you're looking at a new model is, so what? And 23 years ago, when you said a new green disinfectant, the so what was hard to overcome. And, one of the critical assumptions we had was that one day you would have to take disinfectants out of skilled hands into unskilled hands and disinfect everything. And you might raise your eyebrows back then and say, well, why? But then, 2 years later, 3 years later, SARS hit, and they were disinfecting GO trains, elevator buttons, handrails, school boards, and at the end of the day, you can't train everyone how to use toxic disinfectants. So our technology was mandated by the ministry to be used everywhere. And that was a huge, huge step in the awareness and trial phase. And validation came when all the hospitals picked it up and never turned back.
Wow. And you mentioned ministry, and sometimes people that are listening to this could be in Canada, you could think Ontario, but because of my knowledge of Virox, how big are you guys now? Like, where would you find Virox Technologies in your life in the world?
Well, we're in over 70 countries now with our technology. We're in about 8 different verticals. So instead of taking a disinfectant and using it everywhere, what we did was we tried to understand those that disinfected in different areas. For example, a veterinarian has very, very different needs and claims and pathogens that are important to him than someone in the dental industry. And someone in the pro beauty industry is different than that. And someone in the farm animal industry, it's species specific. So a hog farmer doesn't care what a chicken farmer is trying to disinfect. So there's a fragmentation that happens throughout the marketplace. And what we did was we built very, very unique strategies around each area of disinfection. So it might be a similar formulation in the bottle, but it's positioned differently in the label, in the claims, in the websites are completely unique and dedicated so that the user can go to that site and understand the procedures, the protocols, the claims, and why that product's relevant for them in that specific area. So that's what we did. We had a bespoke, if you will, strategy to each section that each sector that requires disinfection, from hospitals to dental clinics to, your chiropractic clinic to a veterinarian office, you name it, wherever they disinfect, we're there.
That's awesome. And I know that, like, for some people, they're always looking at brands and brand labels. I know that Virox Technologies is in all these brands that we use, right? Where it's like the technology that's working within the product. And every single time I'm in a hospital or something, I can kind of turn the label and I'll see your logo right there at the bottom. It doesn't matter what the label says on the top. Like, you guys are really just an industry leader in disinfectant. Now, we've all had a very interesting 2 years with disinfectants. Going back to the beginning of COVID, we all thought that we were, going to get COVID from our Amazon delivery packages, and we had a designated spot for packages and, pre-sanitized stuff and post-sanitized stuff, and we had garbage bags laid down, and everybody's rushing out for hand sanitizer, and we all started like using this stuff like nonstop. Like this was the year of sanitization, if we can call it. Like we've never used so much, we've never thought about it more, and yet you're the technology behind a lot of these products that we were using. What did the beginning of the pandemic look like for Virox Technologies? Like, I have no idea. Obviously, you're an essential service, which is incredible. So you're going, but for an industry leader in sanitization, and all of a sudden, not just like Toronto, not one country, but the entire world goes into crisis, and we all got obsessed with sanitization. What did that look like at Virox Technologies?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, we get up every day and all we do is look at the disinfection, infection prevention market, as it's called. So this was no surprise to us. We knew this was coming. SARS was a preamble to how quickly something can spread and how it can change the behavior of governments, of people on what they do. I mean, again, did you ever think that people would be disinfecting elevator buttons at the First Canadian place 10 times a day? 20 years ago. It's been done now since 2003 and 4. So we've had many outbreaks since then. From the scare, the Ebola scare 3-4 years ago, the MRSA community outbreaks in different states throughout the U.S. We're used to these little spikes that you see. Can I say that we foresaw a pandemic? No, but when we saw the rumblings of it back in around Christmas of 2019, we said we better be prepared for whatever's next. And then all of a sudden, in April there was the big lockdown, and our partners asked us to step up and make as much product as we could. And it was really an interesting time because, we've got that plant. It's about 70,000 feet in Oakville there. But we'd never run 24/7 before. So, we're not unskilled labor. We have quality assurance technicians. We have all kinds of different people that are to make sure, because we're regulated like a pharmaceutical company. So, hey, put your hand in the air. Who wants to work a night shift? And thank them, like they're amazing people. They all put their hand in the air, said, yeah, I'll do it. This is what we do. We save lives. They were really willing to step up. Didn't know it would last a year, so it really disrupts your life when you're working a night shift. But when this first happened, the Wall Street Journal called me up and they said, look, your company's so prominent. We want to really understand the dichotomy between boom and bust. So, we see all these businesses shutting down and busting, and you're going to boom. So we want to talk about that side. And they did a half-hour video. It's on our website on Virox. And then, of course, you get a lot of attention in the media when you're on the Wall Street Journal. And then Premier Ford called me. Doug Ford called me, and he said, all of our public utilities and facilities, the hospitals, they use your technology. How can we get you to produce more? And we talked about, the need for more high-speed equipment. And, because he's a businessman, he understood that. So he got a team together and they created a grant called the Ontario Together Fund. And we worked to put together a proposal, and they funded us to the tune of $850,000, and we put in some high-speed equipment that allowed us to basically triple our output per day of products, especially the wet wipes. And so we were able to supply the marketplace in a big way, especially frontline workers. So, on our side, it was more on the boom side, running 24/7. The key learning in that is it's like having a house party 24/7 for 2 months, and you realize, oh, my microwave's broken, the fridge is broken, the toilets doesn't work. The amount of stress on the building that was unanticipated, because we're not built for that, on the equipment, the maintenance. So run your car 24/7, lend it to an Uber guy and for 24/7 for 5 months, see how it goes. So it's that kind of stuff that really surprised us. And of course, the wear and tear on the people. So we paid them a lot extra. We gave them bonuses. We did lunches and dinners and surprise stuff. And the 12 days of Christmas, we did so much stuff that we were so grateful. We had shuttle buses picking them up, taking them home. It was crazy, but we did what we had to do for these amazing people. But the key learning was that. But we were able to really ramp up and step up, and it even surprised us.
So you've got this like overwhelming demand. You've got international attention. You've got your 70,000 square foot facility in Oakville. And looking back, it's always like easy to say, oh yeah, that would have been a great idea. Shuttle buses, oh, that's a great idea. But you're still the same team. And so what did you do in preparation of this? Like, I know you said, in December you were thinking, okay, we better be ready. I would guess that you had no idea, like the extent of, I mean, you mentioned, right? Like, you didn't think it was going to be going on for a year. We all thought it was going to be like a 3-week break, an extra long March break, and then that was going to be it. What did you do as a CEO to get everything in place and ready and proactive, as opposed to what most businesses would have been just reactive of just like, you know what, we can't produce enough. You know, this is as fast as we're going. There's just there's not enough supply. You know, complain. How did you go on the proactive side? What did that look like?
Well, again, because we, you know, call it, prescient, call it what you want, because we're in this business and we saw this coming, and we're such a good planning company with our strategic planning processes that are company wide. Our materials management team was reaching out to suppliers, securing everything from skids to boxes to cartons to caps to wipe substrate. So we were putting all that in place before the craziness happened. Because what happens in situations like this is you get predators. You get people that try to corner the market. So in our business, what you don't want is a distributor calling and saying, how many wet wipes do you have? I'll buy them all. Because what he's going to do is corner the market, put the price up, and then the people see the price go double, triple, and they look at the name on the bottle and they say Virox, and we're the bad guy, not the distributor. So allocation is really important in the infection control space when an outbreak happens, to make sure that the product gets where it's going to get consumed, not where it's going to get stockpiled, and you're going to have predatory pricing. That's important. But what we didn't expect is there's companies out there that make very, very simple things, like a cap for a bottle. And, you know, your machine has to run 24/7 in order for you to make any money, because at the end of the day, a cap is 7 cents. Well, we saw caps go to 25 cents, 30 cents, because the capacity's finite. And everybody wanted to make products in bottles and sell disinfectants. So you saw a lot of new entrants come into the rivalry that were no name, no good products. The government was handing out hand sanitizer licenses like candy. And, you know, I don't know if you know, you'd open up a hand sanitizer, it would smell like tequila, or it would smell like gin. The distilleries were making hand sanitizers because of demand. Now, a lot of them got pulled back because the product wasn't efficacious, or it was downright not proper to be used on hands. And I think the government learned a lesson on handing out licenses so quickly. So that's all been taken back in the last 7-8 months. But you saw a lot of people enter the rivalry trying to make money. And so the whole disinfectant space got polluted with no name, no good products. And now people serious about disinfection kept buying the branded products, hospitals, dental clinics, etc. But the amount of flooding of stuff that went into the Home Depots and into the consumer space was just absolutely crazy. And now you're seeing that stuff. You know, you can get hand sanitizer for $1 at Home Depot. So, you know, it was that kind of thing that we saw happen. But we were really well prepared, because this is what we do. It's not a sideshow for us. It's what we do. So we saw, it's like the stock guy. You know, you and I can sit there and pretend we know what we're doing and buy stuff. But there's that guy that stares at the screen all day. Yeah. You know, let him, watch your money for you. Yeah. And maybe you want to dabble a little bit, but, you know, let the experts do what they do. And our people are experts.
A funny story. I went to Walmart last night, and I walked in. There was a huge box of hand sanitizer, and it said free. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, this is hilarious, right? And so I picked up one. I was like, it was this nice, like, convenient hand one. And then I was walking down the aisle. I looked at it, and all the printing was in like wingdings and hieroglyphics. And you're thinking like, well, that's why it's free. But it's like, how did this get to press? Like, you know, this is like a kind of like, it's a medical product, and it's being used or like it's being manufactured by people that have no idea what they're doing, or they're just rushing it to market. As a marketing agency, we are called probably once a week at another company that was like, we're going to get into hand sanitizers. We're going to, set this up. And a lot of them it was a lot like too little, too late. And many of them just didn't have any experience in actually running these types of businesses. And so they quickly failed out, and we almost ignored them because everybody was just trying to jump on the train. Now, talking about the actual train that, executed, did well, and came through it, I'd love to know what was one of the hardest things that Virox had to do during this last 2 years that you just didn't see coming? Like, what was the thing that hit you guys hard?
I think the thing that really hit us hard that we didn't see coming was, again, when these people stepped up and they said, I'm willing to, come in at 9 at night and work till 8 in the morning. Hey, I'll pick me. And, we'll pay you time and a half. We'll give you a bonus. We'll do this. We'll do that. And then all of a sudden, their whole life gets disrupted because it's 1 month, 2 months, 5 months, 6 months, 7 months. So in April of this year, I said, enough's enough. We're going back to, a normal shift at, 10-hour, 12-hour day shift. We're not going to do the night shift. And we had to turn away business because, you can't push people to that limit. And they were awesome. And we gave them a permanent 20% raise and said, enough's enough. Yeah, that was the hardest thing is watching the effect it had on people's lives. Some of them even their relationships. It's a very, very different thing to do a night shift, but they really stepped up, and it's not easy to find that type of skill set. You need managers, supervisors, you need people trained in health and safety. You just can't call a temp agency and say, can you send me 50 people? You can't do that in our business. Yeah, it doesn't work that way.
And then in regards to the systems, people can break down, right? We're not robots. And it's interesting you even mentioned relationships, right? Because companies have seen that relational equity has gone down. The relationships among peers has gone down. Like it's been troubling. You mentioned a number of things you did, like culturally, to really help people through that. What about on the system side? Like, to ramp up capacity to be a 24/7 facility, what did you learn in regards to I wish this area? I mean, you guys were very prepared in so many different areas. What was the thing that maybe even surprised you?
It surprised us on the system side.
Yeah, on the system side.
Well, was that we had to have a much more buoyant sort of planning system for our materials management. So scheduling, bringing in materials. Like when you're shipping 20, 50 trucks a day in and out, so you got products coming in, you got products coming out, and the place wasn't built for that. There were trucks lined up the street, down the street. There were truck drivers fighting with each other saying, I was here first. So we didn't have a system for scheduling trucks coming in and out because we didn't need one. So we had to figure all that stuff out on the run. Our IT group stepped up. They put in a huge generator in case the power went down. Oak Hill's famous for their little brownouts. So we had to do all kinds of crazy things, on the spur of the moment. A generator system was $300,000. It's half the size of this room on the back lot. And so all those things had to be pulled together by some incredibly skilled people in a short period of time. And it's really remarkable what they pulled off. We had just built a new building across the street for our commercial markets team. I spent $6.9 million building a beautiful building, state-of-the-art equipment and boardrooms with big screens everywhere and, bistros and really, really cool. Empty with work at home. So you get this situation where you're asking people to work night shifts, and then you got a whole bunch of people working from home. And these people don't have the luxury of doing that. There's not even an option to work from home. And we don't have the tools in place to make sure that, people working from home are as efficient as they can be. So I think it all started out really cool with, Zoom parties and crazy stuff like that, cocktail hours. Hey, let's all say hi at 5 o'clock. And then people got bored of that. Yeah. And real fast. Yeah. Because not unlike what I just said, they didn't think it would last that long. Oh, it's fun. It's going to be a month. Oh, flatten the curve for 2 weeks. And so then it carries on and carries on. It becomes, you become desensitized and, you get bored with it. And that's what we saw happen. And the work from home persists. So we have, right now, this beautiful new building's occupied 3 days a week. And Mondays and Fridays, people work from home. But we're seeing people come in anyway. It's like they don't want to be at home anymore. They want to interact. And work from home is great. I think it's cool. It saves people time, all that stuff. But my fear is collaboration. And my fear is, where do the next leaders come from? How do you become a leader? How do you be a peer that people can rely on? How do you become a mentor, on a Zoom call? I mean, where in 5 years, I think it's going to be really interesting to see where middle management is 5 years from now. What's going to happen to that group that didn't get to interact, didn't get to say, oh, that guy's a leader. Let's make him captain of the team. I mean, it's going to be a very, very interesting time.
I think nobody knows yet. So it's going to be interesting kind of seeing how does corporate culture meet with productivity, meet with the new demands of companies and people alike. It's an interesting topic. Now, you mentioned strategy earlier on and strategy session and 2-year plan. It's actually incredible sitting across from somebody that really does plan out. So it's like, okay, this didn't fully catch you off guard. You're used to the spikes, and you've got to be ready for it. And you were working in December on things that we had no idea about. And so it's incredible seeing companies that actually have a strategy and are ready for those spikes. And we're not just saying, oh well, we can't do anymore. I'd love for you to kind of outline, what do you do as a company that has to deal with either like rapid growth, regulatory changes with countries on a regular basis with a company that large. So how do you strategize so that the person that is putting the lids on the bottles understands, what's going to be happening next week, and that you're all on the same page? Because that's hard to orchestrate.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it all starts with the fact that, we've been doing this for 20 years. So I took all my learnings and I Viroxed them, and I've been teaching people as the company grew from 6 people to now we're over 110. About 70 of those people are in the process that we call our road trip, our strategic planning process. But the overarching principles of the company, the corporate strategic imperatives are looked at every year by our executive leadership team, and they shouldn't change. There's like 5 out of 8 of them that haven't changed in 22 years. And those are the guiding principles of the company. Those are the imperatives, the make or break issues that we must follow. And so we look at those and we publish those, and people understand those, and they could recite those, and they know how their job is relevant to whichever one they deliver against. And then we have basically the planning road trip, which we talked about earlier, where the first process is key learnings. What did we learn from prior year when we made the critical assumptions a year ago to create that plan? Where were we right? Where were we wrong? And what did we learn? And then we move into a phase where we look at critical assumptions for the upcoming year, and we build those out, and those are built out by functional group. And then, of course, we look at our strategic plan where, okay, what are the activities that we're going to have to embark on? What strategies are we going to create? What objectives, strategies, and tactics are we going to create in order to get to that next level in each sector that we're in? And, we're in 9 different sectors in infection prevention. So then we roll all that up, and it turns into an operating plan. Like, how are we going to finance this road trip, right? What's the budget? Oh, okay, well, if the budget is X and, we got all these activities, maybe we can't stop at Disneyland for 2 days. Maybe we can only stop for 1 day. So we take a look at all the different components, and we analogize it so that people understand, from scientists to finance people to marketing people to materials management people, they all understand what it means when you talk about a road trip and, hey, we can't stop at Disneyland for 2 days. We can afford 1 day. They get it. And so we all work together and collaborate, and then pretty much everybody owns the road trip, and everybody understands that they have their own role to play in making that happen. And then once a month, we have our key indicators meeting, which we call Pit Stop. And it's a scorecard of all the essential things that we thought would happen that month and what really happened, and then, of course, year to date. And we look at the trend and the trajectory. And so as you see things picking up, slowing down, how do you pivot, which is really important business. When do you pivot to make sure that you're going to hit the right targets, and then of course it all culminates into the plan for the next year with a 2-year outlook. And that's what we're completing right now as I'm sitting here in December. Yesterday we had our finance meeting where we just tied everything up in a bow, and we're ready to go for 2022 and a 2-year outlook. So all that planning, keeps your hand on the pulse of the business, and we're able to see maybe the trends. So one of the sessions that we have, I talked about key learnings and critical assumptions, is one called Trends and Implications, which falls next. So, what are the key trends that you see in your sector? What are the implications of that trend? And then how's that going to impact the plan, the strategic plan? So that whole trend and implications thing is facilitated group by group. What do we see in materials management? What do we see in trends in the cost of polyethylene? What do we see in the, skids? Wood skids went from $9 to $26. I mean, who'd have thought of that? So all these different trends, and what are the implications of those trends? So the implication on that would be, the pricing of a skid of product just went up by 2%. Can you pass that along? Is that trend? Is the implication of that trend, is it going to stay like that? Probably not. Do you pass that along? Do you do a temporary price increase? All the different things have to be thought through. If you do that on an ongoing basis and you make it part of your DNA, not much will surprise you to the extent where you can't handle it.
Wow. Well, speaking of trends, I want to come back to the planning session of this because it just sounds like you guys plan, and then execute, right? It's not about, okay, execute, fix, patch, release. Like you're a plan-based company or a strategic-based company, monthly, quarterly. You have a 2-year plan, which I think is. It's amazing that it's not just a 1-year plan because we've got to think into the future, but not a 5-year plan because oh my gosh, like 5 year that's almost laughable. But when you mentioned trends, I know that we all wish that we had a crystal ball and could look into the future. But in being an industry leader in infectious like controls and sanitization, what are you guys anticipating for the next few years for humankind? Like, if we were to go back a couple of years and ask anyone, do we ever think that Canadians would be just wearing face masks in stores and stuff for years and years and workplace changes? We would have all been wrong. But there was a part of Virox where you understand that a little bit more. You've seen SARS. We understand. You kind of have the front seat for the stuff that's going on. What do you think humankind is going to look like in a couple of years in regards to how much our lives have changed? Or is things all going to just get back to normal and we're all perfectly fine and then we're going to forget about this another 100 years? Like your predecessors are going to do this all again, or have things just changed for good?
Well, that's a good question. The Wall Street Journal asked me that well over a year ago, and I said I think we've entered a phase of a new abnormal. I don't think anything will be normal again. I think the biggest, they said, what was the big difference between SARS and now? SARS was 2003. I said, social media. Social media. Like, I mean, you turn your TV on and they've got the count of how many people are sick and dying on the screen 24/7 on CNN. You've got people sending Instagram pictures of people dying in beds. I mean, social media is the big difference. And everybody is now educated on what COVID is. If you push rewind and you tell 20 years ago and you said what's SARS, what is a respiratory? Oh, I don't know. People will tell you what Ebola is now. Like a pedestrian is educated. So you're going to see a division, I think, of people that are fed up with it and desensitized. And I'm not going to wear a mask. I'm not going to vaccinate. I don't care. Like, I mean, I'm done with this. You're going to see people that are overly protective and will wear masks and gloves and do things like that. And then you'll see a whole bunch of people in the middle that are somewhat desensitized, but they're going to be, call it politically correct. They're going to say, oh, I better wear my mask. I better follow the rules. But how many people do you see walking into a Sobeys and they pull the same used mask out of their pocket over and over and over again and stick it in the visor of their car? People are going to find their own niche and their own way of doing things. In the infection control space, what you're going to see people that, hospitals, for example, they're not going to change what they're doing. They were already doing it. But you're going to see people that should have disinfected that are going to start to disinfect. Why? Because that educated consumer that comes in to get their toenails done at a little clinic is going to want to see you wipe the chair down and wipe the tools down, not just assume you did. That dental clinic, that chiro clinic, is just pulling that little piece of paper up and saying, go lay down. Is that enough anymore? Or do they want to see you wash your hands? There's going to be some behaviors that I think consumers will demand that will say, hold on a second, I didn't see you change your gloves. Do you mind? There's going to be those people. And then all of a sudden that's going to make people go, I better just do the theater and have a little hand wash station where people can see me, watch them, let them see me put my new gloves on. There's going to be what we call infection prevention theater, where you go in and they're going to visibly see you do something. You go back 10 years ago, you went to a Subway to get a sandwich, and the guy was using a face cloth to wipe the knife off, and people were freaking out. All of a sudden, it's now, okay, we put a little hand wash station, but I didn't see him wash his hands. Now they put these weird-looking little big plastic gloves on that look like 3 times the size of their hands for each sandwich. Yeah. They cost 2 cents each. Okay, I'm happy with that. That's the kind of evolution that you see in the hygiene space. So I think it's a heightened awareness, but I still think it's going to be a new abnormal. It's going to be in flux for some time. Viruses mutate. That's what they do. That's what the flu does. It just mutates. So this isn't going away. It's just going to be different.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. I remember, I worked at a pizza place when I was a kid, and we didn't wear gloves, and you make the pizzas, you take it out of the oven, and then you go grab the cash from the person, stick it in the cash register, go back to making pizza, and you just do it over and over again, right? Go over, answer the phone, right? The same phone that everybody's there. And we just have to change. Amazing. Well, a lot of key learnings from the podcast. I really do appreciate the time. We're still in the pandemic. There's news is changing every single day, and just really appreciate kind of helping people understand how to really grow rapidly in a time of crisis. And it's interesting, when we've connected, it's never really even felt like crisis would be a word that would be used in your facility in regards to how you're operating, because you guys plan, and execute flawlessly. You're not as much of a manufacturing plant as you are. I've been in your facilities and seen, the labs and the QA and everything, and it's incredible work what you guys do. So, I think on behalf of even everybody listening to this podcast, thank you so much for supplying us with all the goods that we've so desperately needed in this last bit. Thanks to the team and the staff there that were working overtime, where we wouldn't have even thought that, this facility in Oakville is just working nonstop with trucks down the road to make sure that people in multiple countries had the products they need to stay safe. And really appreciate your insight today. It's just fascinating to watch the continual growth of Virox Technologies and in everything that you guys are doing. So thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. And look for our new technology coming out in next year. It's going to be another innovation that'll just take safety to the next level without compromising efficacy.
That's amazing. You mentioned citric acid. Is that correct?
It's based on citric acid. Yeah,
that's insane. Okay, yeah. Very cool. Well, I can't wait to see that and to figure out what that's going to look like.
Yeah, you bet. All right.
Thank you.